So in this video, what I'm going to be working on is updating the start-stop switch and the throttle on my CX500. From the factory, what Honda did was combined the start-stop switch and the throttle into one unit. So to upgrade these controls, what I'm going to need are a separate start-stop switch and a separate throttle that is a push-pull throttle. Fortunately, Lossa Engineering has both available. This is the start-stop switch that I'm going with. It's a K&S Technology start-stop switch. It's universal, but I think it should be a fairly simple direct plug-in for the CX500. So also from Lossa Engineering, I found this push-pull throttle control, which should be a direct bolt-on for the push-pull cable system in the CX500. Okay, so the first thing I want to show is actually the difference between the two switches. The old switch had a rotating on and off switch, start button. And the new switch is basically what you see on most motorcycles today, with the start-stop switch being a large toggle instead of a rotate, and then the actual starter switch being a nice push-button switch. Much more sleek. Very cool. So let's get down to business here. So first thing I've noticed is the plugs are different. The CX500 has a 9-pin plug. The aftermarket has a 6, right? So looking at the CX500 switch, I've got a bridge here that I created when I updated the wiring harness. That's cool. And then I've got, so that gives me 7 extra wires. And the aftermarket piece has 6. So I made an interesting discovery about the extra wire on the CX500 switch. So the new start switch is a 6-wire setup, and the momentary start switch here is just simply blue and white and black. So when it's pushed, it runs the starter, and that's all it does. But the CX500 switch, what happens is I've got a single black wire that goes to both the starter switch and the run kill switch. So when the run kill switch is set to run, right? Black and white are connected. That allows the bike to run. And then black and yellow and red turn the starter over when I push the starter button. But what I found was there's another set of wires, which are black and red, blue and white, that are connected to the starter switch as well. And it took me a minute to figure out what these are, and I'm surprised they're missing in the aftermarket switch. But it's also another switch in the starter switch. So what happens is when I have the starter switch pushed, it turns the motor over, but black and red and blue and white, the other 2 wires in the start switch, are actually disconnected. And what happens there is when I push start, that's what turns off the headlight. So this is kind of an issue that I've run into with this new aftermarket switch, and that is that pushing this just connects 2 wires, but doesn't disconnect any 2 wires. So whereas in the CX500, pressing the start not only starts the starter by giving it 12 volts, but also disconnects the headlight. And the reason that it does that is because that disconnects the power to probably the most power hungry thing on the bike, which is the headlight, allowing full power to be moved towards the starter. Now, I thought about just ignoring it, bridging it, and saying, well, let the headlight stay on while the bike starts, but I think it's worth doing this right. And I happen to have an extra relay from the fan project, and this is a standard relay. So what I think I can do is wire this relay into this 2-wire start switch on the aftermarket switch, so that when this is pushed, it still fires up the starter like it should, and at the same time disconnects the headlight through the relay. So I think this is a good way to still give this the functionality that it should have and replace this, but using a relay in the path to replicate the function of this start switch on the CX500 using just a 2-wire switch. I'm going to explain how a relay works to help make sense of what I'm going to be doing with the start switch. So the relay that I'm going to be using is an SBDT relay, which stands for single pole double throw. And what that means is you've got a switch here and a coil, and when this coil is activated by creating a circuit, it changes which pole this switch is moved to within the relay. So when this coil is open or there's no power going to it, this relay is going to connect 30 to 87. And when this coil is closed or receiving power, it's going to change a switch inside of the relay to connect 30 to 87. So what's going to happen with my switch is that when the switch is not pressed, I'm going to have black and red, the power wire from the headlight circuit, connected to blue and white, the headlight circuit. So just like my switch originally from the CX500, when the new switch is not pressed like it is right now, the headlight's on. And then when the switch is pressed, it's going to close this circuit, engage the starter, and pull this switch to 87, which is an X, which then turns the headlight off. So what I've done here is I've mapped out the different numbers on the relay, indicating the different parts of the relay, to their wire colors here on the socket, and then what needs to happen to just double check to make sure that power is correct when I match it up with the bike. What that means is I have a new wiring diagram. So what you're looking at here is the left is the CX500's factory plug wires, the relay, and then the new wiring for the K and S switch. So the yellow-red wire is your starter wire, which connects right to the start switch on the K and S switch. It's connected to the black wire, which is our power wire, which is basically the same as what you see on the CX500 switch. The relay has black and red, which is your headlight power, which connects through the relay, to blue and white, which connects to the headlight. Now on the CX500, the black wire has a little tiny splice that goes to the run and kill switch, which basically turns on and off the ignition system. So this black wire will go to the red and black run and kill switch on the new switch, so this guy here, which goes then to red and white, which goes back to the ignition on the CX500 plug. And then our brake light switch, which is just a straight connection to green going to brown and white green going to green white on the new switch, which is these little guys right here. Alright, so right now I'm in the off position. Bike's on, got the headlight on. Okay, so the bike is still in off, but it looks like the relay is doing its job with the headlight turning on and off. So I'm going to put the bike in run. Bike's in run. And now when I push the start switch, the headlight should turn off and the starter should turn over. Here we go. Huh. Pulled the relay out and just bridged across the relay disabling the headlight circuit, and when I press start, works fine. So, surprisingly enough, I'm wondering if, for some reason, having this relay in line is creating resistance to keep the starter from starting. Try this one more time with our relay in place. This is surprising. I did not realize this was going to be a thing. But hey, like I've said before, this is a project. Alright. Bike's on, headlights on. Okay. Nothing. It's apparently just enough resistance to not give the bike juice. So I've gone back to the drawing board on this one, and what I suspected is the case is that the coil in the relay is creating too much resistance to activate the starter solenoid. So that's a problem. So I thought, okay, so I've got two power sources for this setup. I've got the main black wire, which is the ignition wire, and on the Honda CX500, black wires are basically the main power source for most of the bike. So it turns out that the black-red wire for the headlight is a fused circuit that just has the headlight by itself. I suppose that makes sense. So what that means here is, well, if I've got a black-red wire that's a fused circuit that's just powering the headlight, and the headlight turns off when I need to turn on the solenoid for the starter, then why not just modify this circuit so that the solenoid is connected to 87, so that when I press the start button, it activates the coil in the relay. When it turns off the headlight, so there's no load from the headlight on that fused circuit, it activates the solenoid, and it's still 10 amp, so that should be plenty to activate a solenoid without the resistance of the coil. That should work. So all I need to do is just reconnect the 87 wire to the relay, connect it to the yellow-red wire to the starter from the CX500 plug, and then find a ground for the blue and white wire for the start switch. And I think I've got a good place that I can ground to on the harness on the frame. So I'm going to make that change, and I think this might be the trick that I need to get this bike to turn over the starter solenoid and turn the headlight off as it was originally intended. Alright, so got the new and improved switch wired up. I'm going to plug it in here. Okay, it's all wired up. Got the new ground hooked in. Relay is plugged in. Alright. Okay, now push the gray button. The headlight should turn off and the starter should turn. Yes. You know you got a good part when it comes with the free tool. So I've just noticed that the throttle is just a little bit longer than the grip. About, I don't know, say half of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Dremel to this and size it down so that the grip fits perfectly. Okay, with the grip reinstalled, it seemed like it'd be a good time to close out this video and reinstall the tank for the 100th time, and hopefully for the last in a while. I've got to say, despite some of the challenges in this series with the controls, I'm really happy with how they've turned out. It's interesting to see how modern controls gives a 35-year-old bike a very current look. So I'm very happy with it. Having said that, I'm considering what I want to do next on the bike, so if there's anything you'd like to see, leave it in the comments. So now that I've completed the controls, I'm going to put the CX500 away for a little while to focus on my second project, which I've just recently announced in a previous video, which is a CM185, or also known as a Honda Twin Star, that I recently purchased on Craigslist. So in the next few videos I'm going to be focusing on working on this Honda Twin Star. Thanks for watching. See you next time.